Victoria from Biblio Lifestyle, and you're listening to the Reader's Couch podcast, the show that will help you bridge the gap between living a full and busy life to one where you're reading, learning new things, and having fun. Today on the couch, I'm so excited to welcome author Alexis Henderson to discuss her novel, An Academy for Liars. An Academy for Liars follows Lennon Carter, whose life is unraveling until she receives a mysterious invitation to Drayton College, a hidden school of magic in Savannah, Georgia. At Drayton, students harness the power of persuasion, an ability to bend others' wills and, in rare cases, manipulate reality itself. Under the guidance of her advisor, Dante, Lennon is captivated by her studies, but as she learns more, she starts to uncover the college's dark history and the complexities of her own power. So we see Lennon grapple with ambition, corruption, and the seductive allure of power. And she must decide how far she's willing to go and what she's prepared to sacrifice. Readers, you can expect a fantasy novel that explores power, morality, and the blurred lines between ambition and corruption, all wrapped up in a dark academia tale. But before we get into the episode, please subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, leave a 5-star rating, and write me a review if you love the show. So, thanks in advance. And now onto the episode with author Alexis Henderson. Hi readers, welcome again to the Reader's Couch podcast. I'm your host, Victoria Wood, and in today's episode, I'm super excited to have Alexis Henderson here with me to talk about her latest, An Academy for Liars. But of course, we're going to circle back to House of Hunger and The Year of Witching. Hi Alexis, welcome to the Reader's Couch.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Yay, I'm thrilled to have you here on the show. Can't wait to talk about An Academy for Liars. But before we get into it, how are you feeling now that book 3 is out and available in the world? What has your experience been like so far?
Oh my gosh, it's absolutely surreal. It feels like I'm almost living someone else's life every time that I publish a book. I can't believe that I get to do this. So yeah, I feel it feels exhilarating and also scary. And I think that every time feels like the first time in a way, but it's been a great experience for me so far. I love my team and I love being able to write the kind of like dark and magical stories that I've been dreaming up for years. So yeah, it's such an honor, honestly.
How exciting. That's really amazing to hear. And I had fun with this one and I'm really excited to get into it. But before I do, share with our listeners more about Academy for Liars. What's your elevator pitch? And essentially, what can readers expect when they pick up a copy?
Yeah, Academy for Liars is about a young woman, Lennon, whose life is completely falling apart when she receives a phone call from Drayton College, which is this mysterious school hidden in a secret pocket of Savannah, Georgia. And there she learns how to wield a dark psychological power called persuasion. It's a novel that's filled with a lot of morally gray characters, darker themes. There's some elements of horror, but it is a fantasy. And I had a lot of fun writing it. It was my way to return home to Savannah, Georgia, which is where I grew up.
See, I didn't even know that. So I guess that really influenced the setting, which was something I was really drawn to. I love when a book is incredibly transportive, but also atmospheric. And I really got that vibe. Tell our listeners how you infuse Savannah in the novel.
Oh, I feel like in some ways Savannah's almost infused into every book I write, whether I intend to do that or not. That city and its aesthetics and vibe has had such a huge influence on me. I think that it has this really dark, haunted, gothic atmosphere, particularly in downtown Savannah, that I'm just so drawn to. And I think when I was living there, I completely took it for granted. It didn't occur to me that I was living in an unusually beautiful place. And I just thought that everybody lived in that kind of beauty, and rude awakening when I grew older and moved away. And I was like, and I think that really allowed me to almost appreciate Savannah more. I'm not sure if I could have written my Savannah book while living there. I think it was good for me to have some distance to be able to really appreciate the beauty of that place and romanticize it a bit and write my own version of Savannah, which I haven't lived there in many years now. So it's probably Savannah's changed a lot since I was living there. But I think that gave me a sort of opening to create my own version of a place I love so much. And it gave me creative license to create the world of Drayton, which is completely fictional, but exists for me as this kind of like love letter to Savannah in a way. Yeah, it was really fun. I miss Savannah all the time, every day. So writing this book was comforting in a way.
Oh, love that. Love hearing that. So let's get into the characters a bit. So you briefly mentioned Lennon at the top. Lennon receives a phone call saying, "You now are offered admission to this school. It's a magical university." And like you mentioned, set in Savannah, Georgia. But Lennon had a little weird thing happen to her first, and then the admission call comes later. Tell us a bit about Lennon and who she is and what she has going on in her life before receiving her admissions phone call and eventually going to Drayton.
I think at the beginning of the book, especially Lennon is pretty sick. Her mind is not always a safe place. And when I first started this novel, I knew that in many ways she was going to be her own antagonist, that one of the most difficult things for her to overcome would be herself. And she's a thorny character for sure, who I think has a real attraction toward power. And I think it's because she feels like she doesn't have a lot of it. And the way that manifests in her life, particularly at the beginning of the book, but one could argue even throughout the novel, is that she's at the beginning of the book, she attaches herself to an older man, her fiance, who I think to her, in her mind, for many years was this figure of protection and power. And that she felt a sort of safety when she aligned herself with him. And I think that's a pattern that repeats itself. And it was really interesting because, to be blunt, when I was first introduced to Lennon, I thought that she was just like weak and needing a partner who could be strong for her, take care of her. But I think what I realized as I was writing the book, I was like, oh, this person is seeking to satisfy her desire for power through the people that she chooses to date and romantically involve herself with. And once I cracked that, I realized, oh, she's actually she's quite power hungry and vicious and dark. And that transformation, as you begin to see that through the book, or at least I hope that readers will, it was really fun to write. It's sometimes I almost felt like I was writing a villain narrative a little bit. She's definitely, I really like her and I have a real fondness for her, but at the same time, she's not necessarily a character that would be cozy having in my day-to-day life, if that makes sense. I keep her at arm's length, and being in her mind, which again is a dark place while writing this book, was a real challenge for me. Yeah, because I think that some of her mentalities and the way she sees the world and achieves her goals are not necessarily things I morally agree with, and I'm not sure that she does either. Writing a character whose actions don't always align with their ideal morals, it was fun. It was really fun.
Yeah, I love kind of hearing that you discovered Lennon as you were going along, as, oh, she actually might be someone who knows what she's doing. It isn't just always go with the wind. I found her to be very interesting, but the him you're talking about is Dante, who also happens to be an advisor at the school. And I personally felt she was wanting his affections more than anything else, but also at the same time, I guess you could say, yes, using the relationship to her advantage, but also wanting to prove herself too.
Yeah.
It's a unique balance that I think only Lennon could achieve. But tell us a bit about Dante, because I felt Dante was also a very interesting character. And of course, their relationship is very central to the narrative.
Yeah, Dante is Lennon's advisor and professor at Drayton College. Immediately, we have this kind of power imbalance. In both of them, they're grown adults. Lennon is coming off of a broken engagement. Dante has his own baggage and past, but it was still interesting to me to explore within a book that is, about power and what we choose to do with it, a relationship that kind of begins with a large power imbalance, or just inherently has a big power imbalance. And because of that power imbalance, I think the way I handled Dante and approached him was like, I'm not necessarily sure that he or any of the characters in the book are necessarily good people, but I could understand and relate to the decisions that they made given the really difficult circumstances that they are dealing with and the kind of baggage that they bring to the relationship and just the plot of the story in general. So he's, for me, a very dark character, but I think one of my favorite in the book, and he was complex and took me a lot of time to almost feel like earn his trust in a way, to pull back those layers and understand, okay, what's going on here? Because he has some real, I would say, vulnerabilities and traumas from his past, but the way that he has armored himself against them, I think creates a character that for me, at least, was a bit imposing. And I think that is also Lennon's kind of first response to him too, is this kind of almost like she wants to impress or please him or get some sort of validation from him. And yeah, creating that dynamic was really interesting because I think that it's definitely, I think, a pattern in Lennon's relationships. Like the first relationship she's in the beginning of the book, there was this kind of need to please or be the right person for this man. And we see a little bit of that with Dante, but it gets a little bit more twisted with Dante because she's for the first time embracing her own ambitions that perhaps don't have anything to do with the man in her life, or at least the first time within this book. So it gets really complicated, and there's times when they butt heads because Lennon's own ambitions are driving her to places that Dante would very much not like her to go. And yeah, I had a fun time with that relationship. It was just, admittedly though, I was really scared to write it because I think that there is something about it that's taboo given the power imbalance, and I wanted to handle that with care and not have it just be swept under the rug as a thing that's just okay, but rather allow that relationship to represent the kind of core um moral grayness of a book that is essentially about people dabbling with power over the mind and manipulation. So for me, it felt just really appropriate to include a relationship that kind of in some way mirrored that theme. Um, so yeah, it was fun, but both of those characters are a mess and they created chaos. And writing about their chaos was both a joy and a thorn in my side for a lot of the process of creating this story.
Yeah, no, that insight is just so amazing to me. I'm like, okay, that kind of helps to answer some questions that I've had. Another thing that's noteworthy to mention, especially for listeners, is that even though we see Lennon going to this school, we see her getting involved with Dante, we see her learning more about her magic and her power and this world, and we see her learning how to control it better, how to grow. We also see her uncovering secrets about this entire world that she's entered. There's a history behind the school and she's disturbed, obviously, at first about everything that she's learning about this place. I felt reading like Drayton was a character in the novel as well. Was that kind of intentional? And what were your intentions with creating this school that has all this history, but also all these deep, dark secrets?
I really love setting as a character, and I think that's something that I do tend to bring to the books that I write. I usually don't start writing unless I can really see the setting, and the setting is as vivid for me as the characters' voices and the plot. That's just so key for me. I was relieved when you said that you felt like Drayton was a character, because I was definitely, hoping that readers would feel that way. I really wanted, when I was writing Drayton, to give it a past that to me represented the past of Savannah. Savannah has a dark history with just like slavery and the Civil War and so many truly horrifying things that happened in that city. And I think that, I knew that when I was going to write a book about Savannah, I didn't want the whole thing to be about racism and slavery. That was just not the focus of this particular book. But at the same time, I felt like it was almost irresponsible to write about this place without at least mentioning it. I didn't want to basically sanitize the realities of a school in the Old South. So that was my approach to Drayton. So the kind of dark secrets and stuff like that to me are just kind of dark secrets that I know about Savannah's history and the way that city was built and run. And yeah, so I think that there's really, for me, there's some inner conflict in me about loving a city so much and the beauty of a city so much when I know the history that contributed to its creation. And I haven't really reconciled that. And I don't think I maybe perhaps ever will, but I think that when writing the Academy for Liars, I wanted that story to contain all of my feelings about that, including the complexity and some might even argue hypocrisy of just like loving this place that I know has this really dark and terrible history, especially again that kind of involved people who look like me. And it's so complicated. And I think that's something that a lot of Southerners, particularly people of color, have to grapple with when living there and enjoying the beauty of a place, but also knowing where that beauty comes from and yeah, who paid the cost. And yeah, I have so many complicated feelings about the South. I probably need like another book or two or three or four to unpack all of that.
You know what? I think the thing I appreciate is just the acknowledgement. Like everything doesn't have to be on the nose, smack in the face. It is complicated. Don't get me wrong. I recognize that wholeheartedly. But I think sometimes like acknowledgement goes a long way.
Yeah.
And we're
Yeah.
like, yeah, you know what? This place is beautiful. We love it. And there's so many places in the South I love.
Yeah.
as I visited over the years and have gotten to know, but then you go find out about the history. It's just hella problematic. But at the same
Yeah,
time, it's like beauty and pain can exist. It's just, I
yeah,
think it's important to acknowledge them and just not sweep it under the rug. So let's not just focus on the beauty and sweep away the pain. But
exactly.
also, let's not just focus on the pain and not acknowledge the beauty. I think both can coexist.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was very much my reality kind of living in Savannah. I have both beautiful memories of that place and painful ones, and I think that's just kind of life. And yeah, it was really it was interesting to try to encapsulate all of that through Lennon's story.
Yes, absolutely. But again, I felt the two elements run through in this novel as well. And on that note, you've written two previous books that I absolutely loved. I was a huge fan of House of Hunger. I was
Oh, thank
championing.
you.
That book was so good. Just in case there's a listener here who is not familiar, can you just share really quick what House of Hunger is and what they can expect in that novel?
Yeah, House of Hunger follows Marion Shaw, and she works as a scullery maid in this city that's inspired by Victorian London. It's called Prane. And she stumbles upon this opportunity to become a blood maid. And in this world, a blood maid is someone who literally gives their blood for the wealthy to drink. They believe that it has like healing properties, and it's something that a luxury that only the most wealthy can afford. So she takes a train north and becomes a blood maid to Countess Elizabeth, who's inspired by the Countess Bathory. And it's my gothic house book, I would say. There's like a lot of dark secrets that are uncovered in the House of Hunger where she works, and she has this kind of dangerous cat and mouse relationship with Elizabeth. And yeah, that was definitely a fun book for me. I wanted it to feel like raunchy and a little bit pulpy and dark. And I remember when I first started writing the story, I was just thinking of like those old like mass market paperback covers where there's like a woman in a nightgown, like a candelabra, like running through the halls of a house. That was the vibe I wanted to channel. Yeah, that was House of Hunger.
You definitely channeled it. And I love that you said this is like your Gothic house book because that's how I felt. And I think maybe that's why I gravitated to this one because I know listeners are tired of hearing me say it, but I'm a Rebecca fan. So, of course, Mandalay is huge for me. So I always gravitate to like those spooky, gothic, super atmospheric books where the house is a character. And there's, again, just so much history there and just all the happenings with all these wealthy, noble people who live in this luxurious place and they drink the blood of people who work for them. Again, mental, but so good. Again, I really championed this one. And it's also good for the fall time and spooky season. And Academy for Liars obviously is your dark academia vibe, but also House of Hunger is a perfect read this time of year. So if you haven't read it, be sure to pick it up. But you also have The Year of Witching. Tell us about that one as well.
The Year of the Witching is a story that follows Emmanuel. She's a young shepherdess who's living in Bethel, which is this kind of theocratic religious community. No one comes in, no one goes out. And she one day is lured into the forbidden dark woods that surrounds this community. And she encounters these witches who give her the diary of her mother. And from there, she begins to unravel dark secrets about her own past, her mother's past, and the church, which runs this community. And it's like a witchy, dark fantasy, loosely inspired by like the Salem witch trials. It has that sort of vibe. And that was my debut. And I feel like I learned how to tell a story and how to write a book through the writing of that. Yeah.
I have to say, it was your debut, but I wouldn't know it was a debut if they had just covered the name and covered the info and just gave me this book to read. It was
Thank
so
you.
good. Again, you did an amazing job. It's chilling, it's creepy, but it's compelling at the same time. And you do get that, what do you call it, that witchy feel. And it's just good. Again, perfect for the fall season. So on that note, I have to ask you, do you love the fall, autumn, Halloween? What is your relationship with this time of year?
I'm like such a fall person. My birthday is October 5th, so I'm a Libra. I just feel like this is like my time to shine every single year because it's the time I feel like most myself in the fall and autumn. Yeah, I love it. And I look forward to this time of year constantly. I feel like I'm just always perpetually waiting for fall. And then when it's fall, I'm just like all over the place. I have more energy and I'm just excited and happy. So I think I said previously, I think that fall always feels like coming home. Yeah. And I think that's why I keep trying not to write a fall book. I'm like, okay, this is the book. It's gonna be a summer book, a winter book, and then every single book ends up being a fall book because I guess that's the vibe that I channel. I'm gonna push myself. I have a summer book that I'm working on. I think it's gonna be more of a summer vibe. So fingers crossed that I can actually pull that off. But if I write fall books for the rest of my life, then I'd be more than happy.
I was going to say, selfishly, I just want to keep you writing these fall books because I love it. Yeah, I'm so here for them. And I love fall too. Okay, getting into your reading life real quick. What was the last book or books that you finished reading that you'd now recommend?
I want to give this one a shout out. I'm actually still in the middle of reading it, but it is so good that I can't resist talking about it. It's The Scorpion Queen by Mina Fears. It's a fantasy novel. It's not out yet, but it's like this, I don't know, it's like this fantasy reimagining of an imperial palace in Timbuktu. It's really good. Yeah, I want to actually just check that. I think it comes out next year. Yes, it comes out at the end of January and just highly recommend it. Put it on your radar. It's great.
Awesome. What's one of your or some of your favorite local indie bookstores?
Okay, I want to shout out one that I went to growing up, and that is E. Shaver Booksellers in Savannah, Georgia. I have to shout out a Savannah bookstore. That one is an absolutely wonderful bookstore. 3 reasons. Great selection. They have a tea shop there that's attached to the bookstore. At least they did. I hope it's still there. Originally it was a tea room. I think it was called the Savannah Tea Room, and I grew up going to that tea room as a child, and they had afternoon tea and literally some of the best soup I've ever had in my life. But that place closed, and they opened up like a smaller version of that tea room that's attached to E. Shaver Bookseller. So you can literally go get a cup of tea and then go browse the books. Third reason why it's one of my favorite bookstores in the world is because they have 2 cats there, and they are beautiful and adorable, and they're really sweet. I guess not a great bookstore if you're allergic to cats, but worth it. Just hold your breath and do a sweep of the bookstore because, yeah, it's really great. So that's one. And then I also really love Wayfaring Booksellers, which is a queer bookstore here. Yeah, they handled orders for me and my books that I signed, which are sadly closed now, but not the bookstore. The bookstore isn't closed, but the signed pre-orders are over, unfortunately. But I would still highly recommend going to Wayfaring Booksellers. It's a great shop.
And for our listeners who are not local, they probably could give them a ring and get a signed copy as well. So that's also a really cool way to support local indie bookstores. Okay. Getting back to your book, An Academy for Liars, and wrapping things up and tying it together. Again, this is book 3. I know you've done your job. You've written it. It's out there. Honestly, there's nothing you can do. However, what are you hoping in an ideal world readers might think or feel or want to pick up the phone and call their friend or text the group chat after they've turned the last page?
Oh, that's such a great question. I think that I would love for readers just to feel as though like are attached to my main character Lennon. I think that was one of my main fears when I read the book, is that nobody would like her or relate to her in any way. And I think I'm always pleasantly surprised when someone says that. So I think that's like a private hope. I think in the character of Lennon, I put a lot of things about myself that I either don't like or wanted to hide. And I think that I hope that other people, when they see her on the page, maybe can see or accept parts of themselves that they feel maybe ashamed of or embarrassed by. But I also hope that people just read it and are just like, that was crazy. That was wild. I think that's always my goal with books. I don't necessarily need to write books that move people deeply, although I think that's the goal for every author. But if someone's just like, that was really weird, but I also couldn't stop reading it, I feel like I've done my job. So I think yeah.
See, that's how I was going to close it out and end and say, when you finish An Academy for Liars, you're going to say, whoa, that was a ride. And I want everyone to go on this wild ride this season. Again, look, you can read this next year off season anytime you want, but I want you to get a copy because it's so good. And I want you to get around to it so we can talk about it. So I want to hear from you readers. Let me know what you think about An Academy for Liars by Alexis Henderson. Alexis, thank you so much for coming on the show and speaking with me. This has been fun.
Thank you so much for having me. I love chatting with you. I had the best time.
Thank you so much for listening to the Reader's Couch podcast. Please subscribe to the show, share it with a friend, and take a few seconds to leave a rating and review. Until next time, stay lounging, stay reading, and whenever you're in doubt, go straight to your local bookstore or library. Thanks again for listening and happy reading.